Welcome back to the Convo Couch, ladies and gentlemen. I am Pasta Jardula, and of course I got Jonny Sue on the ones and twos. And if you're wondering why we're here, it's the monetized Convo Couch now. Thank you to all our Patreons. We have 65 of you out there. Thank you so much. But YouTube has decided to play ball and let us get a few dollars for advertising. We have a super chat going. And the reason why I'm over here today is because I have a very special guest in the house. I have Preity Upala and Preeti. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Go ahead.
Namaste, everyone. Hi, my name is Preity Upala. And oh my God, so I am from Sydney, Australia originally, but now I call LA home. Was born in the Middle East, grew up in Europe, and moved to Australia, and then finally to New York and LA. And I always joke, I say I'm an ex-investment banker turned multimedia entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So fate brought me here. I had a career change and had a spiritual awakening at the same time. And here in LA, I do many things. I work in the film industry as a producer and, developing my own show. But I'm also an international speaker. I'm a radio host, political editor, and I'm writing 2 books at the same time, but one of them is going to end up being my first. And I'm a Dharma ambassador. So spirituality is the foundation of everything I do. And my passions in life are traveling and spirituality. So I try to marry those two no matter what I do.
Yeah.
So everything is global in its focus, and yet it's very localized because it's coming from the soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
and I'm
awesome.
a citizen of the world. I've been to almost 100 countries, speak 5 languages, and grew up in 5 different cities.
What languages?
Hindi, of course, English, Urdu, some Arabic, Telugu, which is a South Indian language, and I speak just a little bit of Thai because I've been to Thailand many, many times.
What was the third one? You said Urdu? Or?
Urdu.
What is Urdu?
It's the national language of Pakistan, and also was a northern Indian language, and still it's hugely spoken in India.
So you got a lot of knowledge. You understand the language over there.
I can read, write, and speak, yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, it was important for me to have you on the show when I
Yes.
met you. And, my first question to you is that obviously you have all these accolades and all these things, a citizen of the world,
Yes.
which I love it. Do you consider yourself to be more of an actress model, or because I've looked at a lot of your political work, I've read a lot of it, and it's some great stuff. I mean, I agree with some stuff, I don't agree with some stuff, but do you consider yourself more a political analyst, commentator, or more? Are you more going for the acting side? Are we going to see Preity Upala on the Bollywood screen, or are we going to see her in MSNBC arguing with somebody?
Well, Preity Upala has already been on the Bollywood screen. The beautiful thing about destiny and dharma, which is your purpose, is it evolves with you. Many years ago, I thought I wanted to have an impact on the world by using Hollywood as a platform, because I thought when you have that kind of global audience and reach, you can have that's when you get to share your strong message and touch people. And that is, of course, still true today. But I've just found that there are other ways as well to do it. And because I've changed so much, I realize that there are different avenues for myself. So I think content creation, and in particular, kind of having my own show, that's a passion of mine. So I'm developing a sort of a travel show that's going to be pretty spiritual and philosophical. So that's my baby. That's something that I just think that's, part of my greater dharma.
Yeah.
But that I've morphed from that to, I really see myself as a global thought leader. And I think that my gift is my voice and my words. And I think speaking, writing, expressing myself, and being the sort of embodiment of these things that I talk about, that's really my greatest gift to the world. I think I can affect more change in that way. But I live here, and Hollywood is, of course, also something I'm passionate about. So I feel I can marry both of them.
Yeah.
But they are separate for me. And, people, look, everyone has an opinion. But I think if you spend a lot of time doing research, as I've done, and you have a professional background and an academic background as well, a research background like myself.
Where'd you go to school?
Sydney University. I mean, in Australia, I have 2 degrees. I have a degree in IT and a degree in business marketing.
IT?
Yeah, I'm a
Johnny, we got some problems that she can look at over
no,
here?
no, no, not that kind of IT. I mean,
Okay.
the information systems for huge investment banks kind of thing. I
Yeah.
used to run those, you know.
You were an investment banker of sorts?
I
or you worked
was.
in
I
the
was an
banking-
investment banker. I worked for Investec,
Yeah.
which is a very well-known South African Jewish investment bank based in Johannesburg. But they had a huge presence in Sydney or in Australia, their Asia Pacific headquarters. And
Yeah.
I was a banker with them. I was also a management consultant for a UK company. I got to travel all around the world.
You love to travel, huh?
Yeah, and then I, as a management consultant, one of my clients was Telecom New Zealand, which is like AT&T in New Zealand. So I got to live there for a while and live and work there. It's such a gorgeous country.
New Zealand?
Oh, yeah.
What was your favorite place to live? Was it New Zealand or?
Sydney is something else. It's my favorite city in the world.
Sydney.
I mean, it's the most beautiful city in the world. My favorite city in the world is Bangkok.
Okay.
Because I've been there a lot of times and I know it well. But if you're just talking picturesque, scenic beauty, definitely Sydney. I think it's hands down. I don't think anything comes close.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
So-
say that with a lot of pride because I'm a Sydney sider, you know.
Okay. I mean, so pretty much you don't know where it's going to happen. It's kind of, I think like, you know, and I think to myself, I was an actor when I first moved out here. You know, I was on stage since I was 6 years old. I always did plays and
Yes.
everything. And in high school, I had a chance to either play football or, you know, compete in acting as a thespian. And I easily chose thespian because it was just all, you know, what I wanted to do. And I wanted that big platform until I decided, I said, no, this is what I love. And you're sitting in what I just decided to do and go for. But I think it's awesome that you kind of are leaving it open because you write some good stuff. And
Thank you.
Getting you into this arena, I told you, this is going to be the world has changed. This business has changed. So when you come on today, you're going to have some new trolls following you for your opinions.
Haven't had one yet, so hopefully. Well, again, it's how I express it. You know, I think there's a way to do it with love and light where I think people... Look, my experience of traveling to so many places has taught me ultimately people are the same. They want to be loved. They want to be respected. They want to be heard. They want to be understood. And if you come to them with love, even however strongly, firmly planted they are in their ideologies and their worldviews, I think if you approach them with respect that they deserve, they will listen to you. And they may not agree with you, but if the respect is given to them genuinely, they will accept it and they will give it back. This is really been my experience. It's not always, it doesn't always happen in the political and media world.
It doesn't.
That's the problem because the people aren't getting the respect and they feel that they don't have to give it back and they're not giving it back.
They're
So-
also not getting the right information, which is the
That's
reason
true.
why. The fact that you
Yeah.
are a girl from India, I mean, I wanted to have you in here
Yes.
for those reasons because, you know, I've been so confused. You know, obviously, I'm not going to hide anything. We met at a Tulsi event when we
Yes.
were, you know, doing journalism work together. I mean, we weren't together. We're doing,
Yeah,
we're all
yeah.
there doing journalism work.
Yes.
And I've been so confused about everything that's going on because the first time I heard that term, Hindu fascism,
Oh
it
my
was
God.
just so confusing to me. I was like, Hindu and fascism.
They do not go together.
Because you're saying that the end game is love. You said that the end
the
game is
essence,
love,
yeah.
peace, respect.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what I always thought Hindu was. I thought
It is.
Yeah.
It never
It
changed.
to me, saying Hindu fascism was like saying jumbo shrimp.
It's an oxymoron. Yeah, it doesn't sort of, yeah.
But let's dive into that because I think
Yeah.
that when I first approached you and I said, well, let's talk about the BJP, let's talk about the RSS, let's
Yeah.
talk about Modi, let's talk about this new thing, Hindutva.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Kashmir.
I think honestly, the joke is that the Hindutva it's a new thing even for most Indians and Hindus. They're like, really?
Yeah.
Because it's so, this has been going on, you know, since the colonial times, I think, but it just baffles me that I don't think this happens with any other group, but, you know, we are supposed to just accept a foreign group trying to tell us about ourselves.
Yeah.
They're trying to tell us about our own identity. This is what's going on, I think, with this particular conversation.
Yeah.
And it was going on in with historians and Indologists for a very long time. You would have these German Indologists who, so Indology is a study of Indic study and civilization. So basically they were studying India and its enormous history and heritage and all that. And these people had never been to India, and they didn't even speak Sanskrit. And they were just making up whatever suited them. And they came because they were cited and they were published in these great universities. It was, people just took it as the knowledge of this word. Is the and it's only recently that so much work has been done, not just by Indian Indologists but also some foreign ones who are fair and balanced. They've done a ton of research and countered everything, refuted everything. And I'm happy to say that one of the biggest pieces of progress made in this area is, I don't know if you've ever heard of this term. Have you ever heard of Aryan invasion theory?
Aryan invasion
theory. It's so there is no such thing as Aryan, and I'm sure you've heard of the word Aryan. So it's something that a lot of Hitler was very inspired by reading some of the
Aryan.
Yeah, well, it's Aryan.
Aryan. Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
Arya is a Sanskrit word. It means nobility. So an Aryan is simply a spiritual person. So it's like a Brahmin person or some pious person, a pure person who lives their life in that way. And it wasn't supposed to be someone from Iran or from some European city or anything like that. But the way it was distorted by some of these German historians and so on, and also Hitler himself was so inspired by this word, and I think that also became sadly the framework of his movement, because he used to say Aryans, and of course the Jews are the other, right? So he distorted that term Aryan, and of course the swastika is the same thing. Their symbol, for the SS and all that, is an inverted swastika. But swastika is about purity and light, but luckily they don't use it in the same. Luckily,
I think when Americans see that picture of what
swastika,
they're immediately, it's like, oh, it's something evil, it's terrible, and whatnot.
The real swastika is not, but of course the Nazi version is of course.
Yeah.
But luckily it's inverted, so you can't even say because in India you'll see swastika everywhere, but it's in the right way. It's forward,
Perfectly, yeah. But I think people will be confused about it.
They could be, but thankfully in the public sentiment and just public discourse, the view of India and Hinduism is extremely positive. And anyway, you don't have any evidence to counter that. But the Aryan invasion theory was, it was formed by these foreign German Indologists, essentially, that said that this incredible Vedic knowledge and these amazing, the philosophy, all of the best of what India has to offer, it didn't generate from the Indus Valley civilization. They were either this steppe people, or they were Anatolian farmers or whatever. They came from up Eurasia, Europe, Central Asia, whatever. They trickled down to India, and they had this wisdom, and they imparted that to India. Basically, he's trying to take away any acknowledgement of the fact that Vedic knowledge and philosophy originated in India, and that the Indus Valley civilization was not the first civilization on Earth. And for so many decades, people believed that, and it's only recently that they refuted that, because they found the DNA of, I think, someone from India that was around for longer than the 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 years, and it was an Indian DNA, and with no trace of anything from steppes or whatever. Yeah. And also you can do a lot of study with language. Yeah. But so there's been a ton of work, and it's really been debunked now.
Yeah,
It's been debunked to death. Thank God for that. To tell an Indian person that even this all this amazing wisdom and knowledge that you have is not yours. Yeah, some great person from Europe came many thousands of years ago, and they gave you your language and this amazing culture to sort of, I mean, it's the part of that colonization thing, I suppose.
It is.
But sadly, a lot of Indians believed it. And this kind of trickled down in the academic systems and so on, even in India. And even today, a lot of university students, in social sciences, of course,
well,
it goes on and on, but that's that.
Yeah. We're gonna circle back to that because it's so funny that you said that, because I heard something the other day.
Yes.
Now, when I first approached you, I wanted to talk about all those things.
Yes.
But to make things, you told me it's important that we have to understand the history of India and India politics before we unpack stuff.
That's right.
So today, I just want to let my audience know we're not going to get deeply into the BJP or the RSS or even Hindutva, because you said that's a big conversation for down the road.
We'll do another episode sometime.
We're going to get into India history, Modi's elections, and we're also going to get into Kashmir.
Yes.
So we're going to get into those three things because we have to unpack everything. And there's so many questions I have. I even reached out to some people who are anti-Modi, as we can say, which a lot of people have just popped up because I didn't, like I said, this is the second time, when it comes to following Tulsi Gabbard and covering her. The first one was conversion therapy. I was like, what the hell is that?
Oh, okay.
And she didn't even know what conversion therapy is. So when you say the word Hindutva, I'm wondering to myself, does she even know what Hindutva is? Because I didn't. And I
didn't know that a few years ago, and I'm a Hindu.
You're Hindu. You know what I'm saying? So when you hear Ro Khanna kind of putting it out there.
And he's a Hindu. Well, he's
convert
now, but
I'm a little bit upset with Ro, and I don't want to get into that right now. But let's talk about the history of India and how it came, because we've heard Kashmir in the news a lot lately, and everybody seems to matriculate back to 1947.
Yes.
Right? And that is when we had the colonization of pretty much the British leave and leave India and Pakistan.
Yeah. Well, we booted them out. They did not leave of their own accord. That's another myth,
Well, let's talk about everything because from what I understand, in 1947, they left it on the table about what to do with the Kashmir region. But
that's not true. And I'm glad I'm here to describe to
leave that be. I'm so sorry.
People what exactly happened, because even someone like yourself, I mean, you're such a good researcher, but when you say things like this, I'm like, wow, this person is really in the know, and even they're confused, or they don't get the facts about this small thing that, I mean, it's factual, what I'm about to say, all these things.
Please do, because up until now, we were never taught Indian politics at school.
Even Indians aren't taught Indian history and politics in school, or whatever they're taught is it romanticizes the colonizers. So we have a whole book on, wow, the Mughal Empire, was incredible, even though they butchered 8 million Indians. That's okay. But, they were
8 million.
Oh, yeah. And so...
Where are we starting? What's the starting point? Indian history, teacher Upala.
Okay, so
Professor Upala, right?
So the Indus Valley civilization, and funnily enough, the Hindu civilization is the oldest continuing unbroken civilization in the world. They have been, it was the oldest. They have been other ones that are old as well, but even the Chinese one, there was a break. A lot of these great civilizations imploded. And, they were destroyed, or the worst is, of course, the Islamic invasion wiped them out. When you look at Mesopotamia, Iraq, Iran, Babylon, and all of those, now they're all gone, Very, very little trace of their original history. But proud to say that Hindu civilization and the Indian civilization is unbroken to this day. And even after 1,000 years of colonization, illegal occupation, invasion, genocide, everything, we're still going, in 3 years' time, we're still going to be the most populous country in the world, and 85% of India is still Hindu. So that is a triumph, I think, for humanity in a way, against all odds, to preserve your culture, which I think people don't appreciate, and I think some of this part of this whole Hindutva thing is to protect heritage, culture, language, our tradition, because it is so easy to get wiped out, as
Yeah.
we have seen. Even a country like Iran, it's what, 3-4 thousand years old. In 25-30 years, completely gone, 100% almost. And that
I
could have
know.
happened to India. And but we I mean, hey, we fought it. We lost a lot of people, but today, look at where we
Yeah.
stand in the world. So it's great.
Can I ask you a question about that real quick? Because
Yes.
I just want to stop you right there. When you talk about all this, all the genocide
Yes.
that Hindus went through
Yeah.
and all these hard times and, still trying to fight to keep their culture and whatnot.
Yes.
Do you think that can cause a reaction of like, hey, now we have to be overcompensated as far as being very, nationalistic to kind of really make sure we preserve our culture, and that can create an outreach because,
I get your point. I think as a race, as a people, Indians and Hindus in particular are very passive.
yeah.
They're very mild mannered. They're very soft. I always say we should learn to really grow up here, I think, at some point, because we have so much to be proud of, and we are so strong, and we've had the greatest thinkers and leaders. But as a group, because we are about ahimsa, and which is, by the way, it's not non-violence as such, but it's doing the least amount of damage while defending yourself. That's the real,
Can you say that again? Because I think that's important. It's a
Yeah.
great phrase.
ahimsa, which was made famous by Gandhi. He was a big follower of ahimsa, but way before Gandhi, we had our great leaders who, taught this concept. It's a Hindu concept, it's a Vedic concept, but it doesn't mean non-violence.
Yeah.
It means doing the least amount of damage to the other while defending yourself. So ahimsa doesn't mean just take it lying down. It says, hey, defend yourself. If someone is trying to kill you, you have every right to defend yourself. However, do it in a moral way. And you look at armies around the world, and you take a look at the Indian army. It is a very moral army. They could have taken out their adversaries a very long time ago very easily, but because they chose to be more humane about it, and it really practice a lot of self-restraint, I would say, even to this day, which I think in some ways it's been a bit detrimental. We've lost a lot of lives along the border that we shouldn't have, because the forces were the police forces or the army forces were, they just didn't want to go all out. They could have, and it's only recently that at least they're defending themselves better. So we're getting a little better at it. So I get your point that the overcompensation can be a natural thing. I don't think it's happening in India, because I think for that to happen, you also have to have the personality to begin with. And we don't have that personality naturally. Now, I can see that in other groups, they have that naturally. And there have been times where the tipping point happened, and you just see this, kind of revolt in a way.
Yeah, I mean, when
So-
somebody comes by, like
Yeah.
a friend of mine, and I don't want to make a point, but like I used to, I didn't grow up in the worst neighborhood at all, but there was shit that went down. But we had this one friend in particular, and I should say shoot that went down because we don't want to get demonetized. I forgot. He would keep, when we would fight and it would end, we'd have to pull him off somebody because he had this experience of somebody getting up and hitting him back. So it seemed like he always wanted to, if he was squaring off on somebody, just beat them so they wouldn't come back anymore. I mean, wouldn't that be like kind of a mentality where people say, well, the Hindus have been the victims for so long.
They have.
They've been under the knife for so long. So now, it's almost what we see when people, Israelis talk about that they've been the victim, that they're going to be the victim no more. And they're going to make sure that their enemy or whoever is
Well,
is put down for good.
Israel has a zero zero tolerance policy towards terrorism, which is healthy for them. But they, as a people, it's night and day when you compare Indians and Israelis.
Tell me about the Indians, definitely.
Yeah, so we're not like them, and I mean, there's always leaves to take out of other people, the way that certainly we can look at how they've countered terrorism. I think it's been very effective, but we're different people. I don't think we'll ever be that, and I don't think that's also what India is about.
Yeah.
Because I think and also you're talking about where did it all start. Very, very conservative guess. People say 5,000 years. It is way older than that, because even now we're finding, archaeological artifacts and sites in India that clearly show 10,000-year-old depiction of life. And it's just so anywhere from 6 to 8. Some people say, some people say 10, some people say 12. So it's very ancient.
Yeah.
But how we've preserved our culture and heritage is phenomenal. And especially our faith. I don't think Hinduism is a religion. It's not a way of life. I think it's much more than that. It's a civilization.
Yeah.
And it's a knowledge system, I think, and a way of life.
Yeah. Hindus are proud nowadays. I see a lot of Hindus. And,
because we have leaders that we can be proud of, something that we didn't have for about 60 years.
Yeah.
And we'll come to that, but that's a big part.
What do you want to talk about when you talk about the history of the politics? Do you want to start with 1947? Because I've heard from other people. It's kind of weird. In school when we did talk about Gandhi, we would always, I think a lot of people would mention that Martin Luther King Jr. liked Gandhi because
was very
he was
inspired,
peaceful
by him.
Protester.
Yeah.
But then I hear a lot of criticisms about Gandhi, not just from, people who want to pull down their statues.
But genuine Indians who love their country.
That's who, and I'm talking
actually,
about, we're talking about Mahatma Gandhi.
The biggest criticism of Gandhi would actually come from true patriots. They see a different reality. The world doesn't know about the freedom movement, or they read about it, but they were not there, or their aunts, it's not a situation where this is a very interesting point. A lot of people they just think that people say, who's the greatest man that ever lived? Mahatma Gandhi is probably he's number one, I would say. People say Mandela and all that, but the story, the narrative is that this man gained independence for his country. It was one man, honestly, that galvanized a whole nation, and using his Gandhian principle of ahimsa and satyagraha and self-rule and non-violence, without any violence, he was able to get independence. And what a great framework that is for the world.
Yeah.
And even I read that, I would love to say that life works that way, but it doesn't. And it's a beautiful narrative, but I think it's shameful to some of the people who died for India's freedom, because that's not the reality that they experienced. So a lot of very, very proud Indians and historians and so on, they feel that he let Pakistan go too easily. As in, even the formation of Pakistan, a lot of people were against that. A lot. He kind of gave it up too easily. He was like
Gandhi.
Yes, because he was part of the Congress party, which was the political Indian party. I think it was pretty much the only one. So you had the British Empire, and then you had this political party, Congress, and Gandhi was not a politician, but he was very close. Nehru, who was our first prime minister, was president of that party, and that was that dynasty party, right? So when this whole idea of the partition came up, I think a lot of proud Hindus felt that he gave it up too easily, and they wouldn't have done that. They would
Pakistan.
They would have found a way. So, but we'll get to that. Yeah. So the history.
Who did he give it up to?
Well,
you know exactly who. I just want to say the Pakistanis. Was there a ruling body? Was there a group or something that went and formed Pakistan?
I think they feel like he's kind of sold out in a way. A lot of people even thought he was a British spy. Because, you have to understand the damage that was caused unnecessarily. He appeased a certain group or a certain ideology in a way that I don't think was the best thing for the country.
Yeah.
So a lot of people would agree with me on
Does that have a lot to do with, you hear when we talk about that when, the British controlled India and that region, that they pit Hindus against Muslims?
So they controlled all of India, not just one state. When you say region, are you talking about
Pakistan too, or no?
No, I mean, there was no Pakistan 73 years ago. It was all one. It was India. And in fact, there was a time when even Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, all India.
All India. Yeah.
And, even today, the effect of India and even Hinduism specifically reaches all the way to Asia. So, for example, this will blow your mind. The largest Hindu temple in the world is in Cambodia. It's Angkor Wat.
Really?
Yes.
In Cambodia?
Yeah, it's the most famous temple in the world. It's a Hindu temple. It's
Yeah.
in Cambodia. And Cambodia is not a Hindu country.
Not at all. It's more of a Buddhist country,
Yes.
isn't it? Yeah.
And the most spiritual place, Muslim majority Indonesia, is Bali, which is 100% Hindu. And the national carrier airline of Indonesia is Garuda. Garuda is a creature from the Ramayana, which is our ancient script, story. And the airport for Thailand is called Swarnabhumi, which is a Sanskrit word for our land. So the national airport in Thailand, the capital airport, has a Sanskrit name, and a lot of Thai names are also, they have Sanskrit Hindu names. So the point I'm trying to make is that Hinduism had influenced far and wide, all the whole Asian, Southeast Asian subcontinent area. And they were inspired, and even today, there's a lot of remnants of that. And people always use Indonesia. I think it's very disingenuous to use Indonesia as an example for what a large Muslim country it is, and it is a democracy. It's not terrorist infused like the other Muslim countries, so to speak. I think they forget to, either they don't know or they just fail to mention the Indic roots of Indonesia, even the name Indonesia, right?
As you're saying all this stuff, Professor Upala, I'm going to call you, it's like...
People don't know this, and these are simple things that are, they should know about it.
Yeah, well, we people are starting to jumping off position way down,
Yeah,
if I started from here without going back there, and that was like the allure, I'm like...
I just thought,
Upala,
let me share the context. So I just shared with you some of the reach of India and Hinduism.
Yeah. And we were talking about India and Pakistan, too.
No, we'll come to that,
Please,
but it kinds of adds in.
Because I'm hanging on pins and needles. No. This is some great stuff, by the way.
So it's however old it is, 5, 6, 7,000, 8. So for 4,000 years, India and China were the most prosperous civilizations in the world. Remember, the West... America it's a joke when people, I love America, but, they are so, make America great again. And wow, this is the greatest country in the world. You don't even have a history to talk about. Yeah. You're barely 200-300 years old. Yeah. And you compare that with a country that's possibly 6,000 or 7,000 years. Yeah. I'm sorry. It's a...
Yeah, but we got Bud Light, rock and roll, and a lot of stuff that makes it great.
It's a trip. So for 4,000 years, India and China were the most prosperous civilizations in the world. And then China had its own issues, but as far as India is concerned, we had the Islamic invasion. That was the first invasion that we had. And
when was that? 1300s?
1,400 years ago, 1400. Pretty much from the inception of Islam. So that's a religion from the get-go. It's been like that because that's their, it's spread by the sword. There's a saying, that's just how they are, and they still are. So, they came, the Mughal Empire came. Normally, you come, you conquer, you loot, and you leave. But that's not their ideology. They will come, loot, conquer, rape, pillage, massacre, and then convert the land into...
This is back in the days?
No, they still do it. They did that with Iran not that long ago.
You think, okay.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm not going to push back on you too hard with not, but I think a lot of Muslims today are very secular. I know a lot of them, I'm saying, they're not too deep into their religion. And
but that you need to differentiate the ideology from someone who practices that.
Christian ideology is bad too.
But they did have a reformation.
They had a New Testament compared to Old Testament, which really helped out a lot of things.
3,000 years, they were also massacring people a lot.
Absolutely, they
don't do it anymore because they read
it. We do it now. We in the name of bombs and.
You can't equate.
I understand.
It's not a
more
fair.
geopolitical. It's not fair.
Yeah, it's not. It's not.
Totally.
It's not a religious ideology.
Yeah.
So anyway, that we will have an episode on comparative religion one day maybe, because that would be a trip. So the invasion, they came and they were with us in the country for about anywhere between 600 or 700 years. And then we had the European colonizers. People, I don't even know if people know this, but British came much later. First were the Portuguese,
Yeah.
and they actually colonized in a small, very, very tiny part of India for almost 400 or 500 years, long time. And they were brutal. They were even more brutal than the British in many ways. And people always say, when we talk about the British Empire, the joke is, well, at least we didn't have the Portuguese or the French or the Spanish, because they really were more brutal. The only saving grace there was they were only able to control a very tiny port in India. So with Portuguese, it was Goa. With French, it was Pondicherry. Tiny, So yeah, it was bad, but it was a long time, but it was so tiny, and we were able to get back those regions eventually. And then, of course, the British came about.
Why did all these people want? Was it the natural resources within India? I mean,
spices, trade. Especially, I'm talking about the European, because I think the Islamic one that was spreading and religious,
that was backed by the
conversion.
Crusades.
Very different.
Yeah.
But with the European, spice trade. Also, hey, there was a little bit of conversion stuff too, not too much, but it's just also knowledge. Wisdom, they knew that there was this philosophical land out there with so much wisdom there, and I think that the pursuit of that led them to. I mean, it wasn't a genuine pursuit, because they didn't come to learn about spirituality. They came to take what they could.
Yeah.
And so the British were there for 250 years, I think. And at one point, and again with Gandhi, and we had
was that the late 1700s? I think they got there.
Yes.
Late 1700s.
Yeah. So kind of the late 1800s.
Yeah.
That's when I think we had enough. And so when the First World War happened, the British promised India and said, if you serve in our army, we will grant you independence. Let's do a trade-off.
After World War One, fight with us and we'll leave you be.
Fight with us, we'll leave you be.
We'll give you back your own shit.
We fought and we died for them. We didn't get it back. And then
they kept it.
They kept it, and so they lied, And then the Second World War, also the same story. But in between these world wars, I think that's when this people like Gandhi and all the freedom fighters, they really had enough, and they realized that there's got to be another way.
What were the big atrocities that the British?
There's an economic atrocity, and then there's a manpower atrocity.
Yeah.
As far as body count goes, oh God. I mean, it's funny that we talk about Hitler as this evil, genocidal maniac. Excuse me, Winston Churchill killed between 3 to 6 million Indians.
Yeah.
And he is hailed as the greatest Brit that ever lived. Where is your humanity in this narrative? I'm sorry. If I hear some British person go on about Churchill, I have never in my life.
I don't like Churchill.
I know a lot of Germans, but I have never in my life ever heard a German person being proud of Hitler. Even their far right, even their parties who are nationalistic or whatever, even they would not say, we love Hitler, what a great man. I don't think anyone actually...
I have never,
even the neo-Nazis don't say that, I don't really, not in that way, right? But so there's so much, the ironies of life, and the just, it's sometimes, well, life is a Leela anyway. This is a famous Hindu saying,
what does it mean?
Leela is a divine play. This is all a play. We're just actors playing a part.
Yeah.
The principle of spirituality is don't get attached to your role, and don't get attached to the world. Just surrender to the present moment. You are who you are. Just play your part, and enjoy the world. Don't be off it, and understand that this is all Maya, which is an illusion. So I think that's
some great stuff.
We got a lot of solace from that sort of thinking. So the freedom fighters had
enough.
Had enough. They galvanized
Winston Churchill's
people.
Gotta go.
The the Indian National Army was becoming very, very powerful at this time. And ultimately, so it's a myth that we got the independence because of Gandhi's
You talked about the INA.
Yeah, the INA is the Indian National Army,
Yeah.
led by Subhash Chandra Bose, who is a lot of Indians would actually consider him the father of the nation. Or
What's his name again?
Subhash Chandra Bose.
Can you spell that for me?
Subhash, Subash.
Subhash.
Chandra, Chandra.
Chandra.
Bose, which is Bose, like Bose.
Like the Bose.
Like the Bose.
Subhash Chandra Bose. He was the leader of the INA.
He was a communist as well. And he,
But you don't like communism.
No, well, it's funny because the person who wrote our constitution, Ambedkar, Dr. Ambedkar, was also communist. So our Indian constitution, by the way, is the longest constitution in the world. It's very comprehensive. They have a law for everything. It's very kind of anti-state and anti-religion, though. It kind of takes... it's not very favorable to the majority religion, let's just put it that way.
Gotcha.
So, which was a problem. Yeah. So you have to be careful who writes your constitution. But
rewrites it.
So the INA really, came up, and ultimately we got the independence. And there's a lot of British generals. I think some were still alive, or they were alive until not that long ago. And even in their diaries. And the beautiful thing about Brits, they journal everything. And all these war diaries, they said, we cannot win against the INA. And there was a revolt. There was, mutiny happening with the naval base and the armies.
How did the INA weaponize themselves? Did they just use swords, and was it just by numbers? Was it just getting people to believe in a central force?
No, they had weapons. They had stuff. I mean, they had ammunition.
Where did they get it from?
Well, like this is where Japan had played a big part.
Okay.
They really propped us up.
So
And
Japan helped the INA.
yeah, in that way, we have a lot to thank the Japanese. They really supported us, and say what you want, but we had some of our freedom leaders who went to Germany, and so there was this communist. They were kind to us in that way, because they were also against the British, So it's funny how all of these things work out.
You were a proxy to them.
So the bad guys are bad to some and not that bad to others. It's all a trip. But anyway, finally in 1945, it was the lord or the general at the viceroy. They were like, this, we're done. And also at that time, Britain was bankrupt. They couldn't fund anything. They're like, we need to get out of here. This is not happening. These people are very angry, and they're very strong, and they outnumber us. And after 250 years, it's time to get out. And that's how that happened. But of course, they leave a mess wherever they go. So they had seen this divisions in India, and I think they just said, let's divide them a little bit before we leave. So I want to come to a very important point, which is how Pakistan came to be, because people don't even realize the origins of it. So essentially, we had there was a Muslim League. So at that time, the Muslim population in India was tiny, I think 2%.
Yeah.
Tiny, tiny, tiny number. And they had a small Muslim League, very favorable to the Congress. They were all friends with each other. So the founder of Pakistan, his name is Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And he was a leader of the Muslim League, small political party. When it was pretty evident that Brits were going to get booted off, we'll get our country back, we have a constitution, we're going to have a parliament, we need our leaders, we need our first prime minister. Who's it going to be? And Nehru was this, talk about narcissistic, demagogues. He was the original one, but he had his eye on that ball a long time ago, and he was like, that's mine. I'm going to get that role as the first prime minister of India. And
it's a Muslim.
No, Nehru is a Hindu, from Kashmir originally. Okay. No, Jinnah, he also had his eye. Basically, both of these people wanted to be the first prime minister of India, but number one, so it was Nehru and Jinnah.
Gotcha.
And also, there was Jinnah had this point that he wanted 50% representation of the Indian parliament to be Muslim. So he wanted a population of 2%
to represent 50%
of the Congress.
Yeah.
And it's ludicrous to anyone, and it was not taken by Gandhi or Nehru, certainly not. And at that point, that's when his own greed and hunger for power led him to say, you know what, this proves my point that Hindus and Muslims cannot coexist in peace. They had for thousands of years, but he had this rhetoric like, no, they cannot, we'll never have parity in this country. And there will never be a Muslim leader in this country, in India. So you know what? I want my own state. And I want a Muslim leader and I want a Muslim state. And that's when Gandhi said, yeah, sure. You know, and the Brits were like, yeah, sure, have your state. So that's how that happened. So the resistance came from, of course, the rest of India. They're like, we're going to lose an arm. What are you talking about, you know?
Yeah.
But
why didn't, okay, so there's mass chaos on British's exit.
Yeah.
You know, when they're decolonizing the place.
Yeah.
And there's a Muslim leader who says, you know what, we can't get the representation we want in the Indian parliament. You should give us our own territory.
Yes.
Okay. And even though they represented 2%, they took their own territory.
Yeah, they did get that.
And the Indians, I think, you're saying Mahatma Gandhi was so get the British out, give them what they want.
Yeah,
let's
and give
move
these
on.
guys what they want. Let's, go part our ways. The problem was that was a bloody partition. We didn't need to lose so much land that we, and originally Pakistan was supposed to be what's known as Bangladesh.
Yeah.
That was, that's really the Pakistan, but this West Pakistan, or what's Pakistan today, they had, they didn't like the Bangladeshi Muslims or the Bengali Muslims because they're like, you guys are way too close to your Bengali Hindu brothers. You speak Bengali, you look like Hindus, and you don't speak Urdu, and you're not this Muslim Brotherhood type of personality. And that's when, they didn't even want them, to be honest. And in 1971, there was actually a war, and India actually liberated Bangladesh from Pakistan. And so they got their own nation, and they're forever indebted to us for that. And it's by and large, there's a lot of jihadi elements now, but for a long time it has been fairly peaceful relative to what Pakistan has become,
Yeah.
So this is how that state came to be. I think politically there was little resistance. Of course, people were, they didn't want this. And then also there were a lot of Hindus living in Pakistan.
Yeah.
How are you even going to do a population exchange, So this two-state theory, you got to be careful. Do
you think a lot of it had to do with just wanting to get the Brits out of there and just saying, hey, we're going to settle. Let's get these people out of here, whatever they say.
No. Even if they were still there, or even if they had left decades ago, I think this problem is very prevalent because it's one group saying, we can't live with you. The other group, honestly, they've lived with Jews. We were the refuge. We were one of the only countries in the world that didn't persecute the Jews. We took them in. We built synagogues for them. We took care of them. And then when Israel was formed actually in 1947, they went back, and again why India and Israel are such great allies today. And again, in their constitution, they had an expression of gratitude to India for protection against persecution.
Yeah. That's the confusing thing too, by the way.
And the Parsis and the Zoroastrians, the Baha'is.
All these people.
All these religions are from India.
Because I was always taught that India is the melting pot of the world. It's like there's Muslims and Hindus and everybody together.
And then it's funny when people talk about minorities. Why aren't all the other minorities? Why don't they have a problem with India? Why aren't we still have a lot of Jews in India. We have a lot of Christians. We have Buddhists. We have Parsis, Baha'i, atheists, Sikhs, Jains. Why aren't these people saying anything? It's like no one has a problem against India except one. Well, you do the math,
Well, before we get to that, let's stop for 2 seconds and take a look. We have some super chat questions real quick. This is so intriguing and interesting. I'm with Preity Upala. Johnny, what do we got for super chats?
Yeah, I have a... Hold on.
Let him get his microphone on. There we go.
Check. Okay. Yeah.
You hear Johnny out there?
Yeah, I got a couple questions. Let's see. Armin Manugian.
That's our boy.
When you guys were talking about communists before, who were you talking about? You called somebody a communist.
Bekar a communist is a bit off. Yeah.
Ambedkar?
Well, he was.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Armin Magunian says no to that.
And then
that's his will. What does he know about Indian
He said
history?
yes. Basically, he wanted a society based on Buddhist compassion and fairness. He wanted a caste system. He wanted the caste system abolished. He was quite correct in pointing out that the people of low caste status, Hinduism, isn't better than Islam.
Okay, so he's again the same Marxist communist rhetoric that you get from the Indian universities. This is exactly what they teach. So I mean, I don't want to do an episode on caste system because that will take a long time.
Okay.
So I think he just tell him to go do more research on Ambedkar and his life.
Well, I got to get you in touch with Armin Manugunian.
Yeah.
He
He seems like a communist himself.
Um,
you know, I mean,
Armin is great. Listen, let me tell you something. Armin enlightened us and told us a lot about Modi.
No, but this was this is not correct. It's not factual. So yeah.
We're gonna save that for another show.
Save it
Go
for
ahead.
another time.
I have a question. So you guys are talking about Subhas Chandra Bose.
Subhash Chandra Bose. Yeah.
Subhas, yeah. So what did he do exactly? So he worked with the Nazi Germany and
No, he didn't do
imperialist
that.
Japan?
He had gone to he was people. I mean, his death is still a mystery today. Some people say he lived long after they said that he was assassinated, but he's in such an enigma, and he was the person who was in charge of the Indian National Army, and he galvanized people not to take it lying down, and he inspired the army to really kind of defend itself, and he was very he traveled all around the world. He traveled to Japan, and he got help from the Japanese at the time, and he even traveled to Germany and met with their leaders there, and there's a lot of bonhomie.
That's so weird because Nazis, they were like anti people of brown.
No, they were anti-Jewish.
They were anti-Jewish.
Yeah, because
it's the Italians that.
I thought they were also. I thought they were also pretty racist.
No, that's the neo-Nazis today in the States.
Yeah, you're right. You're
different.
right.
Yeah.
They for all that rhetoric, their hatred was not towards Indians. Let's just put it that way. Yeah. So it's important to know the truth of these things because and I mean, again, being so inspired by Hindu culture and reading our scriptures and getting these notions of Aryan and swastika and all that. I mean, if you hated you wouldn't be that inspired. You wouldn't even go into any of that ideology if that was if you're so allergic to it.
So we have Christopher Kamin. How do you say Kamenin? Keoman. How do you say that name? Christoph CC left us a $2 super chat. Thank you so much. Our boy David Harris, who is one of our Patreons, also said awesome, love to learn the real indigenous version. Not the colonizers' version.
Oh, wonderful.
Of history.
Thank you so much, David, for saying that.
And
that's
you got something else there, Johnny? Before I say Todd Southern for the $1.99,
No,
he put Ambedkar and Gandhi, question mark. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, no, it's just, it's to me, it was weird, like how it's like, he worked with Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan, but then like after that, you guys still have Jews so that's like weird how that works. And then you got, India's still
and India and Israel are such good allies today.
Yeah.
And, well, India and Germany are too.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing is that
There's
it's
more
the
to
Brits.
it. And
so the Germans would do anything against the Brits.
True,
they could.
and your it's like your enemy's enemy is your friend. I mean, it gets interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so I have to get to the formation of Pakistan because
Please,
it's very
let's
important.
do that. We're in formation of Pakistan.
Okay,
Thank you for watching.
So the partition was so they were going to get their own state. So this will lead me directly into the Kashmir thing.
Absolutely.
So they were around. So essentially, it was decided that the Brits would pack up and so there's going to be this partition. So they wanted to make it fair, and they said each state of India at the time, they were small. It wasn't. So we have. How many of our states we have now? They're large states, but 73 years ago they were tiny.
Mm-hmm.
So we had about 550 princely states. That's what we call them, like little areas, I guess. So each of those 550 odd princely states were given a choice. Independence. I think that even that was an option. 3 choices. Do you want to stay with India? Do you want to go with Pakistan? Or do you want to remain independent? Funnily enough, not one of those 550 states chose to remain independent. which says a lot.
How many went with Pakistan?
Well, 5 out of 550 states, 545 went with India.
Okay.
You know, it was a majority by and
Yeah.
large.
Why?
So, and what do you mean why?
Tell-
I mean,
well, tell
you
us
kidding
why.
me? That's even a question? You want to
Yeah.
go with, well, that is a testament.
But at the time, it was, just forming, we don't have the history.
No, but
to
it says a
understand.
lot about what all of those people thought about their motherland,
Okay.
about what they thought of India. They loved it so much. They were so proud to be Indian, and also they loved their leaders.
Yeah.
How for all their and there's some shady characters there, but no, it was majority of people were sane, and they said it's. I mean, it's a democracy. I mean, it was going to be a democracy. It's secular. So the other big difference was Pakistan was going to be a Muslim state, and India. Well, I think there's a little bit of debate. Was it supposed to be a Hindu state, or was it supposed to be a Hindu majority secular state? They're both kind of similar because the secularism in India comes from Hindu principles of mutual respect for all faiths, and everyone is allowed to practice whatever faith they want, and we don't convert or preach.
Yes.
So I think secularism is a part of Hinduism in that way, and so it's a bit rich when the West wants to lecture India on secularism, which has been like that for thousands of years, and in the purest form.
Yeah.
It's actually a perverted form of secularism where the majority religion is not even given the recognition that it deserves. It's ridiculous. I mean, this is a country that's 85% Hindu, and yet it's not a Hindu state. I mean, if America was 85% Christian, I'm sure you'd call it a Christian state. No, you would. I mean,
I still think people think it's a Christian state.
no, it is.
anyways.
America is.
I don't. You know what I'm saying?
But well, I think the numbers you have, but 85%.
Christianity is much different than Hinduism.
It is.
Hinduism, like you say,
And
it's not a religion to
religion.
me.
Yeah,
I used to say
it's a
Hindus are
knowledge system.
ideology, but you just said
it's
no.
it's not a belief system. There's no believing here. It's a seeking ideology. But I mean, it's not an ideology, but I think it's really a civilization or a knowledge system. So most of them decided to stay with India, and even a lot of Muslims decided to stay with India because Pakistan basically was saying, any Muslims want to come over, come. Very few Hindus were already living there, tiny amount. Some of them moved, some were not able to move, so they still remain there. They have since been killed or converted. But so Kashmir was one such princely state. Now, Kashmir was one of the two biggest Muslim majority states in India. The other was Hyderabad, which is where I come from.
Yeah.
And which is a Muslim state in India, and that actually ended up going with India because it was also inland. It's a bit tricky to how is that going to work? But Kashmir is on the top, right? It could be isolated without affecting.
It could be its own.
It could be its own thing. So the leader of Kashmir at the time, Raja Hari Singh, Hindu leader, funnily enough, for a Muslim majority state, he was leaning towards India, but wanted some time to decide. While he was pondering on what to do, that's when Pakistan just looked at Kashmir and said, this is a Muslim majority state. I mean, we want you. You have to come with us. And when the Raja was still making up his mind, this was just a matter of months, by the way. It wasn't, years or anything like that. They actually decided to invade. They said, we're going to take Kashmir. And
This is Pakistan?
Yes. So right after 1947, there were some indigenous tribal people already living kind of near Kashmir. And of course, the Pakistani militants, terrorists, I wouldn't say terrorists, but militants and so on, their army, they, together with tribals, so they all came into Kashmir. And that's when Raja Hari Singh had to go to central government in India, Nehru and all those people, and said, we need your help to fend off these guys. And I think very smartly, India said, we will help you. However, you have one condition, you got to sign with You have to sign with India. Upon signing, we will fight them and we'll push them back. And he was stuck in a corner. He was cornered, and he did sign, and that is an instrument of accession. So when people say that that's an disputed territory, it's not. It actually legally merged into India in 1947, and this is a fact. And any diplomat would know this. It's only one rhetoric that comes from Pakistan that choose to ignore the instrument of accession. They don't even talk about it. Probably they're not even taught about it in their textbooks. But they just said, no, that should have been ours because it was such a huge Muslim state. So they're thinking on that terms, but legally, legitimately, it merged with India. The government did send troops. I wouldn't call it a war, but they fought. They won.
1947.
Fine. Yeah, just after 1947. And they were able to push them back pretty much all the way back to their own, what would be the border between India and Pakistan, the newly formed border. But they had some miscommunication, I think, with the government, where the government at the time gave instructions to this sort of attacking army and said, that's fine, you're good, you can retreat now. We won, we got Kashmir, it's all good. They should have gone further and pushed back these people. They stopped at a certain point. Sadly, it wasn't beyond Kashmir. It was in the very top of Kashmir. So there is a region right now which is still legally Kashmir. It's still owned by India. It's still part of India. But because we didn't push back the tribals and the militants, they have been there for 73 years now. There's a lot of people there. That part is called POK, Pakistan occupied Kashmir. It's an illegally occupied territory. And they call it Azad Kashmir, which is free Kashmir. The joke, the irony of it all. Yeah. And for 73 years, we have just not had a strong government that was able to take back that illegally occupied territory, So that's how Pakistan formed. And Kashmir, of course, came with India. And we'll talk about 370 and Kashmir later. Maybe you want to do the elections first.
Yeah, we're going to have to.
Yeah.
Well, that's so.
So that's the history of. And
what about that area that you just talked about, the POK?
The POK, yeah.
Did India go in there and annex that? Did they take that back just recently, or did they leave that part big?
Okay, so you can't annex yourself.
Did they go back and?
Did they take back a territory that is legitimately already theirs? Yes. To this day, no. They have not done that with POK. They should have done it 70 years ago. They have not done that because we just didn't have the political will to do it. We've had, and when I talk about the elections, I will tell you about the atrocious governance that we've had for 60 years that was appeasing certain groups, this dynasty. You talk about the evilness of the British Empire, but you talk about the Congress and what it did and the blunders.
Yeah.
It's a different level.
Let's talk about that because before we get to Modi.
Yeah.
Because Modi is the most confusing thing to me on the face of the planet because I've heard so many attacks come from this little small group in the left.
Yes.
These, social justice warriors types, these establishment types that hate Tulsi.
Yes.
And part of the reason, and they attack Modi. But as a progressive, I always thought my biggest enemies were war and poverty. And I look at the poverty numbers.
And inequality as well in terms of gender and sex, because that's important.
Well, poverty is kind of connected to inequality in a lot of ways. If we're going to live by the same type of monetary system, money is not paper, it's resources. It's food, it's water, it's drink, it's health, it's everything. So if we're going to live in that system, poverty, getting people out of poverty is the most important thing to me. And the two countries that have done it the best in the last decade have been India and China. And those are two that are looked upon as, China's now an authoritarian.
They did it more forcefully than us. We did it slower than them, but it's more organic. That's why it took us longer. But it's
whatever the case may be. When you talk about Xi Jinping, when you talk about Modi, Narendra Modi, these two gentlemen during their tenures have really lowered the poverty rates immensely. In fact, I think I read a report the other day that said every minute 44 Indians are being removed every day from extreme poverty.
I think in 5 years or a little over that, there's going to be zero poverty in India.
Yeah,
that's huge for a country that's 1.5 billion people. Yeah.
But before we get to Modi, let's talk about Gandhi. And I'm not talking about Mahatma Gandhi. I'm talking
Yeah.
about the party
The
that was there
Gandhis.
before Modi.
So Nehru.
Yeah.
So
And let me just say this before you get started, because I've
Yeah.
heard Hindus that are not so crazy about Modi that would still say, "Oh, Gandhi, the party before them was a joke. It was ridiculous."
I think almost any self-respecting, educated, as in knowledgeable Indian would say that about we call Nehru Gandhi dynasty, the Congress.
Let's talk about
it's
that.
only it's people like who say things like, oh, the caste system and Ambedkar and all that. It's people like that who, it's a small part of, we call them pseudo-secular champagne socialists type, libtards, that group. It's a small group, however, they are influential because they run some of the top media houses, and they actually sadly run all the universities in India, the good ones. So you're getting these top graduates who get taught this stuff, romanticize their colonizers. They think Nehru was the greatest leader. They think Fabian socialism was a fantastic idea. Gandhian secularism, which is anti-Hindu but appease all the minorities, is a fantastic idea. So they have these ideologists, and they're very influenced by both communist as well as Marxist in this perverted version. It's really bad for the country, and it's a small group. I'm happy to say.
You don't think it's like just people who are standing up for oppressed people who feel that they're down? I mean, maybe
if you want to talk about oppressed people, I think you'd pick another party. This is not the party that is for oppressed people.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to understand because you're dropping new knowledge on me.
Yeah.
So let's talk more about this. Okay. So this party was in control up until Modi, right?
Yeah. So by and large, the Congress, the Nehru was the first prime minister, and his daughter was Indira Gandhi, and her son was Rajiv Gandhi, and Rajiv Gandhi married Sonia Gandhi, and then they have a son called Rahul Gandhi.
Are they related to Mahat?
No. And
Not
it's funny
related.
because that surname is not even a real surname. Indira something was married to Feroz Khan or Feroz Shah, Parsi, Zoroastrian. And I think it was Mahatma Gandhi who gave her that surname.
Okay.
He, and I don't know. I mean, it could have been a political ploy from the get-go, because immediately you hear of Gandhi and you just have this extremely positive. Even today, you say Gandhi, like, wow, man, are you related to Mahatma?
Yeah.
So
are
she
you the peaceful leader?
So she became Indira Gandhi, right?
Yeah.
So Nehru, a lot of problems that we as a country have today with Kashmir issue, he was the prime minister when all of this happened. He's the one who didn't want India to kick back all of those militants and get that POK area.
Okay.
We blame him for that. We also blame him for allowing Article 370 to come in. Because if someone else, the vice president, the president or the deputy prime minister would not have done that. There's a different way to deal with the situation. But he was just trying to appease people, and he had this colonial mindset. He just wanted to modernize India in a way that that was degrading its heritage, I think. You can't just get rid of what you've always been and now suddenly say, oh yeah, we're going to do this, this, and this. So it doesn't work, and it did not work in India.
How long did he have power for?
Oh,
was it she or he? I'm so sorry.
Nehru, man.
Yeah.
So that family for 60 years.
Since
60 of the 73 years that
this party
India
has
been independent, it was the Nehru-Gandhi dynasty axis, I guess, and it was the Congress,
Yeah.
And there was 5 years here and there where you did have another party come up, but that dismantled, and they were assassinated, by the way, Indira Gandhi as well as her son, because
they were assassinated?
Yeah. So
when?
Indira Gandhi, that happened in 84, I think.
Yeah.
Because, well, she there was the three darkest moments in post-independent India have all to do with the Gandhi family. But one was the Operation Blue Star,
Okay.
which she, oh my God!
What is? Oh, you're getting
if you
into
if
new
you have any Sikh friends who if you have any Sikh friends who are watching or listening, boy, will they be happy, because this it was an assault on the Sikh faith. I mean, there were some separatists forming in Punjab area, and they were Khalistan. So a lot of Sikhs, some of them wanted a separate state, which is, I must say, it's a ludicrous idea.
Yeah.
It's a stupid idea. It's a state in India. Just not going to work. And also they were kind of pseudo terrorists and separatists and stuff. And she wanted to curb them, but she had this Operation Blue Star where she sent army officials to the Golden Temple and the places of worship of the Sikh faith, where some of these Khalistanis were setting up shop, and they went in and they massacred everyone. So in this place of worship, there was a huge Sikh genocide, and yes, a lot of them were bad people that needed to be taken out, but just the fact of, and her Sikh commanders and people who worked with her told her, you cannot do this in a place of worship. It means a lot to them, and it just looked very bad. So there was that. Then there was the emergency period. So it's funny that...
What's the emergency period?
Okay, so this is probably the darkest.
When was this? What year?
The 70s.
Okay, 1970s?
Yes.
Jesus.
So it's funny that today in 2019, we use this term fascism or Hindu fascism, whereas in its entire history, there has only been one period where there was fascism in India, and we only had one fascist dictator, and that was this emergency period. And the explanation or description of fascism is not about no dissenting voices, or you have a very strong populist, nationalistic government in place or a leader. No, I'm sorry, but that's not what fascism is about. Fascism is when you suspend your constitution, when there is no parliament, when you shut down any political activity and process. There is no process, and you just lock up people, lock up whoever you want with no warrant, no explanation. And she did that. So the emergency period was a period of almost 2 years, atrocities, locking up and killing and imprisoning, torturing her political rivals, people who didn't agree with her. Press was shut down. We're talking about a little lockdown now in Kashmir. It's not even a lockdown, but whatever, communication blackout in Kashmir for 30 days? Yeah, this happened for 2 years. I mean, in a very perverse way where there was nothing going on. And and she lost the election after that, rightfully so. It's a joke when someone who has understood the history of Indian polity, and when some American wants to talk about India and fascism, and they of course don't know about the emergency days, it's a bit rich, to where do you even go with that? Because they got no clue of the history. And if they had known about that, they would not be saying things like that. But they don't know, they don't take the time, they don't read, they don't process.
Well, I mean, do you have anything else to talk about before we get into Modi right now? Because I want to get into Modi.
Okay, so the thing went on for 60 years, and Rajiv Gandhi, her son, he also, same thing, bad, horrible governance. They were very socialist. Very, very so. You want to look at a example of where socialism has failed. You look at India, because
wouldn't you look at India now today with Modi as a way of socialism working?
It's not Modi's way of socialism. But
it's a form of socialism.
I mean, we are always going to be for the people, but that comes from our faith and culture. What was going on before was a Soviet Union style model, which today we don't have a Soviet Union style model. That model failed for everyone, including the damn Soviet Union, who got, where are they now? Completely dismantled. But I don't know what brilliant idea it was to think that would work for India, but it didn't. And in a very perverted way. So now we have great public schemes, of course, and it's a very open, tolerant free society. To be honest, it's always been, but it's not that style, and it's not communist.
Yeah.
So around all of this time, it's during the emergency time that we had like people like the BJP and the Jansang and these real nationalists who said, what is going on with this country?
Yeah.
And there was this other political party that was starting to form, and it did form, and they even won an election in between, and they were also beloved for a short while, and then Congress came back into power until 2014, and then by that point everything changed. In the 1990s there was a economic reform that happened that was really the changing point in the Indian economy, which is so strong today. Because
in the 90s.
1991 specifically.
When I graduated high school.
We had a Congress Prime Minister, Narasimha Rao, and a lot of people, including myself, think he was the best Prime Minister India has ever had, because he changed the course of where India was going. He got rid of this horrible Fabian socialism, and he opened up, industrialized India, and opened it up to foreign investment, complete open market, and it shot up. And within a few decades, we were doing very well. And of course, today it only continues to grow on that.
Yeah.
So 2014, there was the first big win that Modi had, and he won with a huge mandate. People were sick of 10 years of the Congress party, and we had a Manmohan Singh was the prime minister, who they joke, he was like, did he even have a voice? He was so quiet. He was quiet when the economy was down. He was quiet when there was all kinds of violence going on and there was an assault on the Indian parliament, for God's sake, and people were fed up. So in 2014, I think they voted with their hearts and souls. They wanted a change. They wanted a new India, and they had a party that was giving that to them, and a leader that was very charismatic. And
Modi.
So the 2014 was a huge win, changed the course of India in many ways. And in that 5 years, I think what he did by putting India on the global map, being awarded by so many countries, the highest civilian award, and he's strengthened ties with Russia, with China. They've been adversaries for so many decades. To be honest, they were never allies and never looked at each other favorably, because they are real competitors on so many ways. But Xi and Modi have a genuinely great relationship now. So it was great. But I think the 2019 election it was different than the 2014 one. There were new issues on their manifesto that were important. I think people were looking for something more. So if you want, we can talk about why 2019 went the way it did.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the first time, 2014. Why did he win? I mean, was it the fact that, a lot of people feel that it was just this, and once again, I'm coming from a place of ignorance. That's why I had you.
I'm sure.
It's this form of like Hindu nationalism.
Okay, so this is ridiculous, because every Indian is nationalistic. Almost every Hindu is. Mahatma Gandhi was the greatest Indian nationalist in the world. You could even say that he was a great Hindu nationalist because he was Hindu.
Yeah.
So a lot of all the freedom fighters, unless you're talking about someone who hates their own country, and boy, do we have small group of those people as well. Every Indian or every Hindu is enormously proud, has been for a long time, So that was spun, or that was a false narrative that was peddled by these people who hated Modi. They were with the Congress. They had enjoyed the Congress patronage for a long time.
Yeah.
And also a lot of this hate rhetoric also comes from the Communist Party. We do have those in India. They're running 2 states right now, not well. But they also had this anti-religion, anti-state idea. So to them, Modi was like what they were not. And because he was so popular, the only thing they had was venom. And because these people...
Are you saying that, before you say, let me just stop you right there. I don't want you to go on, because you talk about venom, but there are people who are saying that the minorities, especially in the Muslims in India now, are treated differently. That they're, and like I said, it was so contradictory to what I had always believed
Yeah.
about people living
Well,
in
it
harmony
is,
and peace.
and that says
They
everything.
said there are
yeah.
people who are getting beat up for eating beef.
It goes both ways. There's a ton of lynchings that happen also by Muslim community towards Hindus. They just don't get reported. So you can't say the lynching is happening one way and not the other. And by
Do you
tradition,
think the majority of it is increased, or do you think it's been more? Because when you look at the results of 2019, you'll see that almost 50 million, I think it was close to 50 million Muslims voted for Narendra Modi.
which says
So that's
a lot.
what confuses me as well.
And even some of the top leaders of the Muslim board, even today, back Modi. They even backed Modi on Kashmir, which is huge.
Yeah. Why does he only have one Muslim in his cabinet, though?
Well,
Is there a reason for that? I mean, that's so
He
he's got one Muslim in his cabinet.
he has more than that. I know MPs that are Muslim, and they're well. You have to understand that again. This is the whole Jinnah argument. You want what? You want 50% representation for a very small
I
minority.
want more than one. I mean,
They have more than one.
Okay.
And also MPs, you have a lot. And also, are they interested in politics? Are they going into politics? I mean, is there someone standing? And India is a true democracy where we actually have free and fair elections. Not like here, So people actually vote for a leader that they like, and these are the common person. This is the farmer that's voting. It's not someone at the very top saying, no, I want to, it doesn't, hey, people have spoken, we have, the leader of a southern state today he's got an Indian name, but he's Christian.
Yeah.
I mean, they voted for him, and we have some Muslim majority states. They've won a lot of seats. So across the board, there is a fair representation, and you can't say that minorities are. This is ridiculous because Hindus are persecuted everywhere. They are a tiny, tiny minority. No matter where they go, it's not just an ethnic minority, but a religious minority, right? So to say that there is, in either a violence against minorities, well, why aren't the Christians, Sikhs, Parsis, Jews, Baha'i, atheists, Jains, and everyone else? I've never heard one of them say anything about.
Yeah.
They're also minorities. They're actually tiny minorities. They're not even 1%, some of them.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Ask a Parsi, any Parsi,
Well, the whole thing is that the people that are here saying this stuff, I don't think of
Yeah,
people
but that's
who went
rare.
to India. And,
Yeah.
like I said, they're reading.
No, because you have this small group of people who hate Modi, hate the BJP, hate the fact that they have been booted out of power. They hate that their little clown leader is ridiculed worldwide and nobody thinks anything of him. They can't bear it. The only
Yeah.
power that they have is media and academia. So they write all these horrible narratives. And sadly, you have the Western outlets that hire these writers because they have the same ideology as well. They have
Okay.
the same agenda. So you see these same horrible headlines. Me, as someone who is actually Indian, understands that it's not real. But to the American who has not been to India, doesn't know any of what I've just said,
Yeah.
they will read that and say, "Oh, wow!" But there's no evidence
Well,
for it.
here's an area. I'll give an area because there's a lot of people who say, and this is I don't necessarily who believe this, but there's a lot of people who say as a white person, as a white male, I have some responsibilities as far as my language, especially when I'm the leader of the free world.
Yeah.
And as pertaining to Donald Trump, when he starts talking about Mexico is sending
Yeah.
us this, he's signaling to a certain base that says, hey, listen, I'm for
Yeah.
you, not for them.
Yeah.
They sometimes make that correlation and that parallel to Modi.
Yeah, it's
This says
ridiculous.
Modi says the same
So
thing,
I
where he
speak-
can get too Hindu proud, where it could lead to, I'd say, low information voters, people who are in poor,
Yeah,
poverty areas,
yeah.
to commit atrocity
Okay,
against
so
minorities.
none of everything that you've just said is completely false and doesn't work that way in India. The atrocities don't happen because some poor farmer. It doesn't work like that. I speak Hindi. I speak many languages. I listen to all of these speeches. The only thing I hear in the speeches are he takes everybody along with him, including people who didn't vote for him. He's all about uniform civic code, equal rights for everyone.
Yeah.
So you can't say that you want Sharia law in India, and that's not okay. That's a conversation that you should be having even in America. And I hope you are having, because you don't want a situation where you have a group that gets to have its own set of laws, because that's not what a democracy is, and that's also not what a healthy, you're one country. And this is what this 370 it comes back to that point of, you can't have one state with its own constitution and its own set of laws. That is not how a country works. That's
Yeah.
not how nations are run.
We have Puerto Rico over here. It's a little situation. It's different. And a lot of people say,
Yeah.
what if America just went and took Puerto Rico without talking to the citizens of Puerto Rico?
Yeah, that's
the same thing that's going, like, what a lot of people, especially Western media, is saying that Modi and in India did not converse with the people of Kashmir. They just went in and they did what they thought was best for India, not Kashmiris.
Okay, so Kashmiris are Indians, and so when we had the original partition, that all those princely states, it wasn't, you don't ask each person where you want to go. The chief minister or the leader of each state had to make that decision, and the Raja Hari Singh ultimately made that decision, and he was going to make that decision anyway. So why do you have a democracy? Why do you have people representing you? What are you going to vote? Ask a billion people to vote? And by saying that, Kashmir was way before the Islamic invasion. It was a part of
India.
It is Indian. So it's funny that
it's the beautiness of
so
India we were talking
yoga,
about was Kashmir. Yeah.
Is this, the seat of yoga in the world is Kashmir. The name Kashmir comes from a sage who had written all these amazing scriptures. The Vedic philosophy in many ways is the nucleus of our philosophy, Kashmir. That is it's like Hinduism in motion. It's got such an important legacy for us. And it is a part of us, has been for a long time. There was a point where, because of conversions and all that, by design, the demographic situation had changed, where you had very rarely, but you had a Hindu minority there.
Yeah.
And that's why that's when you have things like, Sharia law there, or you get this cross-border, because you got an ideological commonality with your neighbor who's supposed to be your enemy.
Yeah.
But because you're of the same faith, there is this kind of brotherhood that happens, and this stuff just happens,
Yeah.
And there was a lot of that going on in Kashmir. And then you have these separatists, they, come on, you can't. And by the way, this decision was made, it wasn't made by the Prime Minister. It actually went through, it was a bill that was passed, the 370.
Yeah, but I think Modi, and that was my next question.
No,
why does
we have a democracy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it was passed both in the lower and upper house. So both like Senate.
Are you saying that Modi didn't really want to do this, or do you think it was?
It's not about him wanting to do he needs to get the votes in Parliament, which he got. You know how
But
many?
can he persuade that like himself?
He
Can he say,
could
listen,
have-
guys, we're going to go this. Let's get everybody on board. And
I think what you just said proves the point that he's not this person that this fake media wants to say. Hey, if he was a dictator, there would be no vote. There was a vote, and by the way, do you know what the vote was? 2/3.
Yeah, but doesn't
Enormous.
the BJP have a majority of power within India and the Congress?
There are many parties, and there are many independent parties that are. That's not true. There have been many bills that were not passed that maybe the BJP would have liked to have passed. They did not get passed because people, again, voted with their hearts, and they said, this is not a good law right now. It's not right. It didn't pass. This one, across the board, because this particular issue it goes into gender and human rights. This is the thing. It's got nothing to do with religion. It was
Kashmir, we're talking about.
Well, no,
right?
370
370,
specifically.
yes.
It was a discriminatory towards women, Muslim and any women.
We should
all
probably,
of that's
Johnny. Can we pull up the Tulsi Gabbard video that we asked her those questions?
Yeah.
We'll get that ready. And while we're getting that ready,
So
because
shall I
you're
talk
talking
about
that.
election? Because I think you want to know.
We're going to get back to elections, but we're right here in Kashmir.
Yeah.
Let's stay here 1 second before we get back to the elections, and we'll digress because we're right here in this. With this.
I know.
But when it comes to Kashmir, Why didn't we just, whether it be Modi, whether it be the Indian Congress Parliament, why did they really want to go into Kashmir and take it back, or, claim rights that they already had to it? What was the big reason behind going and doing this rather than leaving it still and letting the situation sit as is?
So when the Instrument of Accession was signed on October 26, 1947, Kashmir, just like any other state, became a integral and legitimate legal part of India. So Mumbai or the state of Maharashtra, for example, that's no more Indian than Kashmir is. All of these states had signed an instrument of accession as well. They all merged into India. So you can't take back something that's already yours. It is a part of India. What happened with Kashmir was, what happened with Kashmir was, after the instrument of accession was signed, and this is why they keep going on about Nehru making all these blunders, because he had appointed someone called Sheikh Abdullah. He was a Muslim leader. He was kind of the first chief minister of Kashmir. That guy was a bit of a separatist. He didn't want to. India had merged. You can't take that back. But he introduced Article 370 in the Constitution, saying that we want our own flag, we want our own anthem, and we want our own constitution. But it's going to be temporary and transient. It's not for years. It's just for a very brief time till we settle ourselves or whatever. I mean, the problem is that temporary and transient turned into 73 years.
Yeah, I know.
It should have never. So I think
I knew that. It was always a temporary.
So people don't even appreciate the fact that this should have ended decades. That's why it passed so quickly in Parliament, because everyone was like, we've been waiting for this for 70 years. Finally, even people who hate Modi, they're like, no, this is discriminatory. You cannot have a state in India that has a different set of laws. You just simply can't do that, because it had become a war zone. It had become because of its special status. It had become kind of they could choose whoever was Kashmiri, whoever was not, and the way that. So every Kashmiri was supposed to be Muslim according to them, and all the Hindus in Kashmir, they're not Kashmiri according to these people. So there was a Hindu genocide that happened in 1989 and 1990. This is a genocide that rarely gets spoken about. It's one of the worst genocides in the world that people don't even speak about. It was the Kashmiri Hindu genocide that happened, and it wasn't just terrorists. It was even your everyday Kashmiri Muslims in that state of Kashmir that it was an overnight exodus where 250,000 people, 750,000 people were they were kicked out of their own homeland. So
this is in 1989-ish?
And 1990, yeah. They call it the exodus of the Kashmiri Pundits. Okay. And I would encourage people to read up on it, because the joke is that with all of this Kashmir stuff, these people finally get a chance to come back to their country, because now that the special status has been removed. So there was this horrible genocide where 750,000 people were kicked out, killed, all the women were raped, massacred. There have been books written about it that are unreadable. You cannot finish the book because it is so deep what these people did, the sinister, and it was all ideological. The mullahs were announcing, your Hindu people are your enemy, kill them. Okay. And so some convert, very few converted. We are too proud to convert. So nobody talks about that. And you want to talk about human rights in Kashmir? Nobody talks about human rights of these people.
We're going to talk about it.
It's very disingenuous.
Let's talk. Well, for a second, let's get up to Tulsi Gabbard. My colleague Fiorella Isabel, co-host of the CONVO Couch. And before we get to it, I want to thank everybody who's on watching today, on YouTube, on Facebook. And somebody put up that I like the fact that this isn't scripted and that we're bringing in people who might not necessarily think the way we do. And I want to just say here on the CONVO Couch, this is why we do that. We don't stay within our own bubble. We don't just get people who think the way we do all the time, because if you do that, then you don't learn anything. And it was really important for me to bring you in, Preeti. So we're going to play the Tulsi Gabbard video of my colleague asking her about Kashmir. And I've said this the whole time. It's like when people start talking about Kashmir, I say this. I said, we're involved with so many situations. This Kashmir situation seems uber complex.
Yeah.
And I think that we should stay out of it.
Oh yeah, and it's a forget about bilateral. Kashmir, after this 370 situation, it's an internal issue, because it's like Canada saying, I don't like a law that Los Angeles passed. We're going to go to the UN and tell them that Los Angeles had no right to pass this law in their own, council meeting or whatever. It's as ridiculous as that. That's what's happening. You have a foreign country that has, by the way, because the instrument of accession was signed, Pakistan has zero moral, legal claim on Kashmir. So I think they're finally starting to get the point that, they may want to send a lot of terrorism there. They may want to destroy India. But the one thing that they don't have a claim on is Kashmir. Kashmir is not theirs.
Yeah.
It will never be theirs.
Yeah.
And even if you did a vote today, if you ask Kashmir, would you want to go? I think they did a poll once, not that long ago. Less than 2% of Kashmiri said that, some wanted to be independent, but less than 2% said that they would go with Pakistan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I'm sure there'll be a bunch of people that would come in here and argue that. And
You can't argue it.
Well, listen.
Sorry, there was a legal No, this is important.
I understand
There's
that.
a legal document signed. If democracy means anything to you.
It does. But here's the way I feel. I have this libertarian mindset that says, let's stay out of certain things.
No, as America
and Trump said,
has no say.
He says Modi's got it when they questioned him.
did.
And that was it. And I'm not a big Donald Trump fan at all, but that was an answer I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Let's listen to Tulsi Gabbard at the rally. Listen to it. Get your Kashmir notes ready.
Okay.
She talks about 370. And then let's talk about what she's talking about, because I didn't know the things that Tulsi was talking about.
Yeah.
She educated
what
us
the
on
sexist, racist laws? Yeah.
You'll listen to it. Here we go.
With so many people taking a strong stance on the issue in Kashmir, what is your personal idea as to how we deal with such a complex situation instead of painting it as a black and white issue?
Yeah, well, first of all, recognizing that it is complex. It is not as clear cut as this one side versus this one side. I think it's important as outsiders looking in to understand the complex history of Kashmir and what has happened to people there in the past, and how many families were driven from their homes there and fled and have not been able to return home. How the previous government had policies in place that made homosexuality illegal, that suppressed the voices of women, that made it. I met a woman a couple of days ago who said that she, as a Kashmiri woman, had no rights to own property there in her homeland. So these changes are things that are happening in a sovereign country. They're very difficult. There are concerns that should be addressed about human rights violations and civil rights violations. But overall, I think this is a situation, again, in a sovereign country that must be worked out by all sides who have a stake in their own future there.
Thank you.
Wonderful answer. Perfectly.
I knew you'd love it.
Yeah.
And I knew you would love it.
So when she talks about families being driven out, she's talking about the Kashmiri pundits that were the exodus of the Kashmiri pundits. And she, as a Hindu, she understands their plight, their persecution. So she's absolutely right. So it baffles me that by the way, there's really no resistance from the right on this. I mean, in fact, there have been a lot of conservative people, not just here, but also in the UK and just generally, who have applauded Modi. Finally, you have equal rights for all, and they're saying this is a great move. And to be honest, it's curbed funding of terrorism in this way, because now it's like fully merged into India. So with 370, there was an article called 35A, and that's what Tulsi is talking about there. That was probably the most discriminatory, sexist, racist, anti-LGBT laws that existed in Kashmir because of 370. So essentially what some of these laws were, a Kashmiri woman, she does not have, whether she's Hindu or Muslim or whatever religion, she's not equal to a man. Her laws are inferior to her male counterpart. So a Kashmiri woman, if she marries another Kashmiri, it's fine. She's going to get her inheritance and property rights and state rights. If she marries a non-Kashmiri, so someone from Delhi or something like that, or America, whatever, she completely, instantly loses any state property or inheritance rights just because she's a woman. On the flip side, if a Kashmiri man marries someone who is American, Pakistani, even from POK, for God's sake, that woman, she gains the inheritance and property rights that are not even, she's not even Kashmiri, but when
Because
she
the man
marries,
is-
when she marries a Kashmiri man, she becomes a Kashmiri. She gets all the good things that Kashmir has to offer.
Yeah.
And this poor Kashmiri woman, even a Muslim, and many women have lost rights. And again, because it's a Muslim majority, there is no recognition of LGBTQ community, let alone their inheritance rights. So I think it's very baffling that from the liberal and the human rights and the social justice people who want, who are about feminism and equality and women
Yeah.
and LGBTQ pro, they should not be having a problem with,
Exactly.
removing this and equalizing and freedom for all. It is the biggest joke, I think. And I think that only proves my point that, number one, they're clueless about the history. And also, they're very, very malicious and disingenuous. So because you're dealing, they don't want to go there. They don't want to talk about women's and LGBT BT rights because it's Hindu and Indian or whatever.
Yeah.
They don't want to,
Well,
you don't want to touch that.
Let me say this, and before we digress back to Modi, when Modi was talking, when I saw Modi talk about Kashmir, he talked about 370.
Yep.
He talked about the women's rights, and
Oh, yeah.
it's something that he had mentioned. He was like, women don't have rights
Yeah.
in Kashmir, and that's why one of the reasons why we did what we did. Johnny, do we have any questions that we want to get to? I see this chat going crazy. Everybody's going nuts with
No
each
trolls,
other.
right?
I want you to. There's a guy, Armin Mangunian. I love you. He
Please get me in
disagreed-
touch with him. I think rather
He
than
is
having
awesome, though. Let me tell you something. This
dialogue
guy-
here, because I think I'd rather have a conversation in
You
private
should.
with him.
You really,
in
really
a civil
should.
way, because I don't want to. I'm going
Yeah.
to refute what he says because he's not Indian and he's not talking from my shoes, and it's
But
not
the guy
fair.
is very knowledgeable and
Okay.
he's very peaceful, loving.
I'm
He's
sure.
been one of our greatest fans. So
Okay,
I don't.
we'll
I would.
see.
I will get you in contact
Okay,
with
okay.
him and stuff because we plan to get a Pakistani person in this,
Yeah.
and put him in this chair where
Yeah.
you're at and get his opinion and his side.
Good luck.
We're not going to do that. Well, we're going to bring you back too because we got
Okay.
more questions for you.
Okay.
Johnny, what do we have? Anything else that catches your eye? I see Michael Cruz hanging around.
Okay, good.
Nothing. we got. Well, let's digress to Modi.
Okay.
Let's digress to Modi because we talked about Modi in 370. A lot of people say that Modi has a right-wing. Besides calling him fascism,
Yeah.
they call him. It's a right-wing government in India. But I've heard people say there's no such thing as
Okay,
a right-wing government in
absolutely.
India. Why don't you tell me about that?
So there is no right wing ideology in India. We don't have right wing. We just have anti-left.
yes,
And by anti-left, I mean anti-communist, anti this perverted version of left that has not worked in India and has destroyed the country for so many years. It's funny that I was just looking up some of the ideological philosophies of BJP. They actually, when you look at what they practice, is a form of, it's called integral humanism, which is funny. It's very similar to secular humanism, where you actually focus on equality for all people, and but you're economically a little bit more conservative, but you have socially, it's very liberal, and we have a lot of social schemes in India. So the right wing policies of India would put socialist parties to shame in the West with some of the public schemes that we have. We have the largest free healthcare in the world, free.
but that's socialism.
No, what I'm saying is, no, but it comes under, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it's not right wing. Because, I mean, it's been there before too, but BJP upped it. It increased the cover. So right wing would not have. So
Yes.
we have 500 million people have free healthcare. I mean, you can just, in every department, I could just say hundreds of millions in everything. We have free schools, we have free hospitals, right to information, right to truth, freedom of course, to practice faith and so on.
It seems very leftist.
It-
You say anti-left,
it is
but it
more
seems left.
leftist than the left here. That's what I'm saying.
It seems like a progressive left.
It's more progressive than these foo-foo wannabe progressives that you have in this country.
No, we have some great progressives.
You
You
may
just
have
get, you're seeing the dirty seeds.
I
because
am
when
seeing
you're
the dirty seeds,
when
yeah.
you're seeing people attack
Because the
Tulsi, not because she's a Hindu,
and the
because she's anti-war, and I keep telling
but she's
you
also because she's Hindu. There's a little bit of that too.
I disagree. I think she's attacked because she's anti-war.
No, but
and
again, you
people
have
are
to
very
go back.
tribal.
So I just explained to you this sinister history that India has had with Pakistan. Now, in the UK, in the Labour Party, which is their left, there's a lot of Pakistani-born MPs there. A lot. They exceed. I mean, it's a lot. They control a lot of the policy. They're very hostile towards India, very hostile towards Hindu, and their policies are very soft on Sharia.
But do you think that the attacks here in America that are on Tulsi Gabbard are Hindu-phobic of sorts?
She ask her next time, because I have heard interviews with her where she says,
yeah,
the religious bigotry in this country is enormous, and I think her candidacy it shed a spotlight on it, and it's very subversive. It's not like Hindu-phobia and Islamophobia. Believe me, in many ways, Hindu-phobia is worse because it's subversive. It's not in public sentiment. It's only in media and academia, and it's done in very kind of subtle ways. You wouldn't even know that there is a phobia. You know, when you're being taught, you go to learn comparative religion, you should see the things that they teach you about Hinduism, and you should see the things that they teach you about Islam. And I mean, you would flip out.
Okay,
you know?
but let me state this, and I'm going to tell you, Islamophobia is real in the United States, especially when it comes to low-informed voters and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of people who feel that a Muslim is a Muslim across the board. They don't understand the difference between, a Wahhabism, a
Sunni.
Shia.
Yeah.
George Bush didn't understand the difference between a Sunni and a Shia.
But
let's be honest.
You can't conflate Islamophobia with being a well-informed person who genuinely is critical of some of the ideologies. You cannot conflate those two.
Of course, but
no,
I'm
but
just
there's a lot of
I'm saying this whole born of, and this is why the
There's a lot
left
of
overcompensates.
And the
Bernie Sanders with he overcompensates because there is this
But you
whole
know
general.
who's a loser in this overcompensation? Someone like Tulsi is. Someone like my group. You know, the Hindus are, the Indians are, because it's like, hey, we are not the bad guy here, and you can't do that. You can't. This is the whole. You can't take from one and give to the other. Someone is
absolutely.
Someone's going to get left out,
absolutely.
and it's not fair. And when there is so much bullying there have been so many suicide. People, young Indian Hindu students they've died, they've killed themselves because of bullying, not just in this country but in others. And you know, we don't have a violent ideology. We're not blowing up buildings and mowing down people in public squares. We don't have that history. So why would you bully? It's not
bullying you because you're a Hindu. They might have bullied you because you're an Indian. It's different because
I disagree with that.
But people.
Yeah, but 85% of Indians are Hindu, so you can't.
But I'm telling you, most Americans don't even know what Hindu is.
No,
they don't know what Hinduism is.
But India is synonymous with Hinduism. Majority of especially you're talking about graduate students, PhDs. You're talking about CEOs, doctors. Most of them are Hindus.
Absolutely.
So,
we're talking about well-educated people from poor compared to poor information voters who don't have the knowledge of what's going on, where they coronate in their mind Indian people with Dunkin' Donuts.
No,
you know
but whatever it is,
it's another minority coming over.
Even the anti-India sentiment is. It's not justifiable, and I'm saying that, you know, you can't. This whole Islamophobia, the conflation that's happening is not okay, because you're shutting down, I think, very, very important conversations that need to happen that are not happening, and the problem is getting worse. And then you have
that's why you're
now
here.
Look at the DNC, look at the state.
But that's why you're
of the
here
DNC.
today.
And wow, you want to talk about the U.S. elections? Don't get me started.
That's the whole thing, is that we're going to talk about these Modi elections.
Yeah.
We've also talked about a lot of some of the social stuff we've done and we can get back to that once again, because I know. So
I think elections you want to know.
I want to know about the elections because we did talk briefly about the social programs which we'll get to why Modi won a second election.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about the first election a little bit, though?
I think it was 10 years of just exhaustion with and Congress Party has had some spurts of growth, but those 10 years were really bad.
Yes.
From an economic point of view, we had a few really, really bad terrorist attacks on Indian soil. Nothing
In
was...
Mumbai
and the Indian Parliament.
Yes.
The worst ever.
I remember those.
He didn't do. They didn't do anything about it. I think people were just fed up at that point, and also the credibility of the Gandhis at that point. Probably the media here. It's ironic that I see headlines where they're want to talk about Kashmir and Modi, but the headline really should be that ex-foreign minister just got locked up for billion-dollar scandals and billion-dollar fraud scams. This just happened a few weeks ago. I didn't see a international headline.
Nothing.
This was news in India. It was headline front page news in India for weeks, and people are so happy and they applaud the Modi government for taking these people to task. So part of the dynasty politics also was they were extremely corrupt, extremely to a level that you've never seen in the world, and they got away with it for 60 years, for a long time, because you didn't have a strong opposition. You didn't have the media was not covering these headlines. The academia was not teaching you the history. So this whole nationalism or kind of just balancing the playing field is so important. So so the credibility also of the Gandhis as a corrupt dynasty party was enormous.
So that was
2014.
Right?
No.
The first one was 2014.
Yeah.
And the second one was in 2019.
Let's
talk about 2014 for a second, because also what we learned about, there was something that happened in 2002. All right, and now we just learned about this last year in 2018.
Yeah, so all these things are coming out of the woodworks now. It's so funny, right?
Yeah.
So basically,
what happened?
Okay, so I'm glad you did it, because again, they want to just smear for no reason. So because
they said that Modi kind of said, "Let the Hindus vent." Now I haven't been able to find any quotes.
That's not exactly what happened. Okay, so there's a city called Godhra in Gujarat. In 2002,
he was the head of state.
He was a chief minister for a long time.
Yes.
And so there was, in this particular city, there was a horrible, horrific massacre that happened where they were, Hindu pilgrims were returning from pilgrimage very early in the morning. And when this train stopped in this particular station, they were burnt alive in a carriage. I don't know the exact count. I don't know if it was...
It was in a train, right?
It was in a train. I think it was 200 or whatever. It's quite a large amount of people returning from a pilgrimage, did nothing to anyone. They were burned alive in a train carriage.
Why were they attacked?
I don't know. I mean,
was there ever a reason given?
I don't think a pilgrim would have... I don't think you can warrant... it's a group of random pilgrims together. I don't think they collectively had done something. So a lot of violence has been happening. I mean, it happens around the world. So this is where there's so much false reporting. Yeah. So you want to report some, like the beef ban thing, right? So you want to attack someone who, you basically you're angry that they're slaughtering. By the way, beef slaughter is banned in India. It's against the law. The person would have been caught and reprimanded by the cops. These people took the matters in their own hands because you're outnumbered. You don't have enough cops, and there's a lot of illegal things going on. People were very angry because in our culture, ahimsa is also towards animals. We love animals. Animals are an integral part of society. It's the only kind of faith that has a symbiotic relationship with the environment. It's funny, environment is a central feature in Hinduism, conserving it. And it has been for thousands of years.
You eat goat and lamb and...
No, it's vegetarian.
Hindus are complete vegetarians?
Most of them are. So it's got the most number of vegetarians in the world, probably 500-600
So what
million.
curries do you have in India?
Everything, but it's got no meat. It has vegetables.
Do you have a lot of shrimp or pescatarians and stuff?
Yeah, but most of them are vegetarian.
It's mostly vegan, okay.
Yeah, no, not vegan, vegetarian.
Vegetarian.
Yeah, because we have ghee, which comes from milk.
Okay.
Gotcha. So, but the sacred cow, that's a special, because it's an agrarian
Pung comes from milk too as well, right?
Yeah, we'll get to that later.
Pung later.
So, so where was... Okay, so...
the pilgrimage comes back.
So this carriage was burnt alive by a bunch of Muslim, I don't... what's the word that you would call
Radical?
them? Not terrorists, but Muslim people. Yeah. And it did not go down well. I think a lot of people were very hurt because they were coming back from a pilgrimage too. So, there were some riots and people died. People across both various religions, they were fighting. There was a little shutdown and it didn't go on for that long. Sure. And also very recently, there were some reports where some senior journalists are now coming out and saying they didn't lie about the riots, but they
embellished and misrepresented.
They misrepresented the riots, and so many decades later, or 15 years later, they are saying, we overdid it a little. They should not have done that because those media reports were false. And it also, it was angering people. So someone who doesn't know what's going on, they're like, what's going on here? So even in the country, people are like, is this really going on? Because we as a group are not violent. In its 5, 6, 7,000 year old history, India as a country has never invaded another nation. It has never instigated a war. I don't think you can say that about almost any large democracy or any large power. Zero.
No,
so,
I know. Even China has Tibet to deal with.
And also, they did. They definitely invaded a few regions. So to have that thousands of years legacy, it's not a violent group, and we have nothing to gain by that. So these riots happened. There was a lot of embellishment, and he was the chief minister of the time. Or in the end, it was curbed. And it stopped and everything went back to normal. But the Modi haters started from way back because he only came into politics much later on. So for many years he was a chief minister only, and they didn't even like him then because he was taking that state. It was doing very well, and they just didn't like him. So
how many Hindus? How many Muslims were killed during those riots?
I don't know, but that number I think was falsely misrepresented too. I think it might. I don't know.
Did Modi have a responsibility to maybe curve and calm down?
But what are you going to tell those 200 pilgrims who were burnt alive? I mean, what I'm saying is can't
we just bring the individuals to justice and tell everybody else?
They ended and they did catch some people.
But they had riots
There were
too.
some trials, you know. Some people did get locked up, and you compare that with the Sikh riots that happened after that Operation Blue Star. Rajiv Gandhi said, Go kill this. I mean, he openly
that's not a good.
No, excuse me. It's just a different religion. You can't say that. It was
I understand, but that doesn't make it okay. It's to say that Modi's.
But you know, people don't hold the Gandhis to Sikh genocide, but you want to hold this person to riots forever.
Can't you condemn them both?
I think he was well condemned. There was Supreme Court of India is an independent body. Mm-hmm. It's actually does not agree with the government, any government. It is not. It's not like a situation where you have here where.
How would they pick those judges, and how many judges are there?
It's fair and free, and we actually.
It's for elections for the judges.
I mean, not fair and free in that way, but it's a fair process.
Okay.
They don't even agree amongst themselves on many things, so that's what there's. Stalemate, I think, on many cases for many years, but so they found him. It's an independent body. They did the deepest probe that you could get about that situation, completely scot-free, no.
I think the UN even.
This is media spun. You know, it is not fair because it affects. Today, you're asking me a question about my country. I shouldn't have to answer you these things. These things should have been.
I know.
What I'm saying is they should have been so obvious to anyone, and it should have been out there. The media should have cleared it because they keep spinning these recycle lies. Today, so many years later, how much longer do an innocent person who is not even involved in politics, never even lived in India. You know, it just happens to be my heritage, and I happen to be a journalist who's about the truth and facts. Even if I was a non-Indian and a non-Hindu, I would have gone about my research in the same way. And you would come that, hey, the truth is the truth, you know. These things and
the truth is the truth no matter what.
It is well documented.
No matter who says it, where it comes from.
So they can't bring that shit again because it's been dealt with. You know?
Can I tell you something? I hate even asking any of these lines of questions. I hate the fact that we have to dive into things so personal.
Yes.
When it comes to Tulsi Gabbard and the attacks that have been coming from the left.
Oh, yeah.
They're disgusting, and I hate even getting
Yeah.
involved in them because this is somebody's personal religion and their
Oh,
feelings
my
and
God.
whatnot.
And it's
she's
not-
not even from India.
And also, it's one thing to question. Yes, religion is personal, but I don't think I'd have a problem asking someone, "What do you think of FGM?" Not a good idea. Maybe you want to outlaw that for good. I think that's a legitimate question to ask. But you're talking about a faith that, I mean, come on, it's not even. We don't. It's not a. It baffles me. I think as a practicing Hindu.
Because I told you when I first heard that,
Yeah.
that term, like, wait, I was like, it was so confused because I'm like, I didn't even consider, and I'm not an expert in Hindu,
Yeah.
but I didn't even consider it a religion.
No,
I
it's
never
not.
did. I considered it an ideology.
And but
which you
I want
me.
to let your viewers know something. There is no such thing as Hinduism. That's a English word. It's not a accurate term. The real name for that religion that is Hinduism is called Sanatan Dharma. It's a Sanskrit word. It literally.
Did you say Siddhartha Gautama? You sounded like the.
Sanatan Dharma.
Okay, it sounds so familiar.
Sanatana Dharma, and it literally means the eternal path, because Dharma is your path and Sanatana is the eternal. It's just a truth. It's for anyone. So that's what Hinduism. And I hate the word Hindu. I don't like to use that. I like Sanatana Dharma. I like Sanatani. Some people want to change Hinduism completely. They want to get rid of the word Hinduism and call it Sanatana
Hindus
Dharma.
want to.
Yeah,
change. You're
because
talking
they're
about
like,
Hindus
what is
themselves.
this? This is an English term given to us by stupid white people who couldn't spell Sanatana Dharma, who don't know what it is. Again, India is not there is no such thing as India. India has a real name. It's Bharat or Hindustan. Hindustan is an Urdu word which means land of Hindus. So
Yeah.
it's in the name,
Well, let's.
Yeah.
I would love to end right there because that was so beautiful.
So we never got to the election and why it
But
happened.
let's do this. Let's bring you back
Yes,
another time
we'll
because
talk
we
about
have
the
a
election,
we
yeah.
have a show that's almost gone for 2 hours, and I'm glad you talked to me about. Will you come back with us?
Yes.
And would you talk about the BJP? Would you talk about RSS?
and the elections.
Will we
I think
talk
it's
about
important.
Hindutva?
Yeah.
We'll start with the elections in 2019. From what it sounds like, that we talk about Modi getting almost 40 to 50,000 Muslim votes is because he injected some form of socialism that brought everybody out of poverty, and they endured it. They loved
but
him
it's
for it.
beyond that. I think the people on the ground and the people in India have a very different reality to India than some American journalist here who's never set foot in the country. What are they going to write about?
Yeah.
I'm not going to write about Afghanistan,
Yeah.
Actually, I am actually writing about Afghanistan, but from a geopolitical defense strategy, it's about the deals done. It's not about. I would never dare to write about what the Afghanis are going through because I'm not an Afghani and nor have I gone there. So for some Western journalists to sit in their air-conditioned rooms here and to just because that narrative also feeds their own this extreme ideology, and they want to, they're trying to appease one group, the other, this oppression Olympics and all that.
Let me help you out. You talk about the oppression Olympics
Yeah.
and all that stuff. And once again, I'm very. I use the term libertarian-minded when it comes to certain things because I believe progressives and libertarians kind of merge on certain issues. They'll never get on board on a lot of issues, but there are some issues core-wise that are so important when it comes to all these things. But when it comes to the social justice warriors on the left, let me tell you what it is. And I've kind of found it out. It's really about this form of, it's a self-loathing, it's a self-fulfilling
entitlement
thing.
as well.
Imposition. It's entitlement to take that. It's a form of privilege. Let's first of all, true privilege. What we're talking about
Absolutely.
to take these positions when you've never been to India
And to speak on behalf of
what
other
you think that other
groups.
people want and other groups want. But they want to portray themselves out to be the
holier
white
than
knights,
thou.
the
Holier
savior.
than thou, yeah.
So they make people this victim, and they're
It's a
holier.
colonial mindset in many ways.
It
It's
is.
sort of subversive.
This virtuous position that they take. Well, I'm going to save these people. I'm going to speak for
You
these people. I'm gonna
cannot.
defend
Yeah,
these
and they
people.
don't appreciate the fact that, hey, maybe the people are actually very happy. Because, in the largest secular democracy in the world, which does actually have very free and fair elections, the voter has a lot of power, and I think the country has spoken. You cannot take when you spin all of these lies about India and what's going on. I think you actually disrespect hundreds of millions of Indians and their opinions and their vote. because they voted with their soul. You're delegitimizing that, and that's not okay. You can't do that to another country and say, hey, I know this better than you do, when you can't even take care of yourself. Clean your room, like
Clean your
Jordan
own house
Peterson would
first.
say.
I always say that.
I just want to end with something. In this global landscape of terrorism and real threats to security around the world, and real ideological warfare and sinister ideologies, and curbing of democracy and freedom and all of that, it's just such a shame that the bad guy is a country like India and a faith like Hinduism. I find that it's ridiculous. Of all the things that we could talk about that are serious problems staring at us in the face, this is really not the bad guy here. And it's a shame. And I just hope that people wake up. I see people waking up. Yeah. It's just, I think media will ultimately, they'll have to change. They can't keep peddling lies forever. At some point, they will be sued.
Well, you know what? You use the word geopolitical. I think a lot of people don't understand that word geopolitical. They immediately tend to go to faith, religion, all these other things, when a lot of the decisions that are made, especially from the person that Tulsi Gabbard, when she just said, they're very geopolitical. Preity Upala, thank you so much for joining us. You'll come back and do it again?
I will. Thank you so much. Namaste, everyone. It was a pleasure to be with you.
Where can they find you?
I'm all over social media. So Facebook is, I think there's a link there. Go to my public figure page, please. Just Google me. You'll find all my writings. I'm a columnist I write for various international platforms, including Jerusalem Post, Times of Israel, several Indian outlets, The Observer, which is global. I have my own radio show called The Eternal Hour. You can find that on iHeartRadio. I have my own YouTube channel. Just Google me. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, all of the networks. I think my email address is given. My website is preetyupala.com. Please reach out. Love to have a conversation. Love to hear from you.
You will. You got to hear some of the trolls and some of the people who just don't agree.
Hopefully more love and light.
Well, listen, I say it. Let's just get in there. Let's talk these things out. I don't agree with everything you say, Preeti, but there's a lot of great things. And I thank you so much for coming here and educating us. And I hope to God you come back and do it with us again. And we'll push back even further next time, but we'll get to some form of understanding, which is really important in these times. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much.
Namaste. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching the Convo Couch. I am Pastor Jardula, Jonny Tsunami on the ones and twos. We want to thank you for reaching our monetization. There's always Super Chat, Patreon to help us out. We love you for keeping us afloat. Remember, we're going against the big guy, so every little bit helps. Pastor Jardula, Convo out.